we're going to see if this works. Round number 2, hoping that Facebook Live works. Again, every time I come on here, I'm always shocked when things actually move fluidly because technology and like syncing devices can be really strange. Oh, I think we're good. I think we're good. I think we're good. I think we're going to do it. I'm so excited. I was like, why isn't this
Oh
working?
my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited too. All right. We got it to work.
So I'm gonna wait a little bit to see if some people will come back.
Okay.
So we'll see. But I didn't do any intro yet. So my first intro that I deleted the first Facebook Live, I was saying that I was really excited to discover you on the interwebs. I found you somewhere on
Thanks.
Facebook because we do similar work, right? In rehab and body
Yes.
work. We're certified through the same organization and we speak similar language. But you have an extra foot in sexuality and the sexual world. Um,
Yes.
so we're talking about kind of bridging the two. And I had mentioned in the other Facebook Live that probably about 90% of my clients have mentioned their sex lives at some point because they feel some sort of limitation or restriction or guilt or shame or whatever they kind of have around that. Um,
Uh,
because like we talked about before, is they're kind of inseparable in a way when you're really working on the awareness of the body and kind of coming back into your body, right? So we are just going to run with this. So I believe the title we put on here was How to Feel More Free in Your Movement and in Your Sexuality. So
yes.
I'm going to throw a question to you. What does that mean to you to feel more free in your movement and your sexuality?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, before we dive into everything, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to join this live, and thanks for the patience if there the technological issues. For those who are unfamiliar with me and maybe don't know me, my name is Missy Kai. I run my own private holistic wellness practice here in West LA, and I specialize in rehabilitative mobility, just like Jess, and I also do bodywork and sovereign sexuality coaching. I see private clients, I have a couple group programs, and I'm working on putting together some online offers. So essentially what freedom in sexuality and movement means to me is that you have the ability to do the things that you want to do without limitation or without having to adhere to somebody else's rules. So this idea of freedom and sexuality in your body is that there's a very deep connection and understanding of what it means to be in your body or literally embodied, because a lot of people have very dissociative qualities in their day-to-day life. Like they're constantly up in their heads thinking about things. It's very difficult for them to slow the pace of thoughts. It's very difficult for them to get to a place of surrender. But that's required in order to have a really beautiful, sovereign sexual exchange where you're able to be in a place of pleasure and enjoy your body as an instrument of pleasure rather than thinking about, oh, do I look fat right now? Or, you know, I have all these other experiences that haven't been positive for me. So it's really just about like reclaiming your own experience and saying, no, I have, it is within my domain to rewrite those stories in my head, or it is within my domain to cultivate practices within my life that allow me to feel free in my personal expression, whether through movement or through sexuality or through, you know, just a playful exchange with somebody else. So, so that's really what it means for me, just to whittle that down to a quick, quick
It makes
sentence.
sense to me because that's actually how I speak is like full physical expression, right? So that you're free to move and operate and function and live in your bodies in a way where you don't feel limited. And it is really like the body image stuff, right? Where you mentioned like women, especially, I think, and men as well. Like we both work with men now. We opened up our practices to men, right? That men also have body image issues, but like even that is a huge limiting factor. We're so kind of bombarded with information of how our body's supposed to look, not only look, but how it's supposed to perform and function and
Right.
operate. So what do you do with your clients, or what have you done with yourself to try to move into more of this space of freedom
That's
without
a
feeling like? yeah, this all is on top of you, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So in yoga therapy, we have what's called the Panchamaya model, and it's translated roughly as the five sheaths or five layers more accurately. And that first layer of being is the Annamaya kosha, which means your physical body. And so that's the tie into like movement and fitness and stuff, especially with my guys. If they have never been through the process of really learning what it means to take care of themselves and take care of their bodies, whether it's through rehabilitative mobility practice or yoga practice or some kind of other fitness regimen, then it's very difficult for them to relate to another person's experience of their body, especially if it's different than
Mhm.
theirs. So,
Important.
very important. So, because empathy is key to relationships, right? So, the very first step I take my students through, especially the guys, but also the women, is this process of grounding in their own bodies, the process of understanding what it, not just conceptually, but what it actually feels like to be at home within themselves. And so this is more of like a yoga nidra based practice where I'll teach them to use sensations as messengers to attune their instrument and say, okay, let me first of all slow down, because maybe in every other area of your life, you know, you're a busy professional, you have a lot of things going on, there's this constant feeling of I got to do in order to have a sense of worth in my life, or I have to be productive. Whereas this kind of practice really flips that polarity on its head and asks you to turn your attention inwardly and say, I'm just here to listen and I'm just here to observe. And it gives you enough space in between, you know, perhaps the movement and the psychological reaction to it to say, okay, what is going on here? And can I use this sensation to guide me in taking inspired action? So in a yoga practice, that could look like, oh, I need to back off a little bit here, or I need to activate a little bit more through my core, or whatever it is, right? And so we just practice that through movement. And then when you get into the bedroom or through an intimate exchange, it becomes less scary to talk about other people's experiences, because you're like, oh, I know what it feels like to have tightness in my chest. I know what it feels like to go too quickly in trying to release something. I know when I'm pushing myself too hard, and so it's easier. I've practiced backing off of things, because
Mm,
sometimes like you don't, I feel like a lot of sexual encounters break down when two people are having a difficult time understanding what the other's process is and communicating it. Like it's hard enough to communicate your own inner experiences, especially if you've never like been given this vocabulary before. So essentially
mhm.
just to whittle all this down to a soundbite is just using sensations as a messenger and being really grounded and communicating around that process will really, really help the rest of this. So that's the absolute foundation. Before we even talk about like navigating relationships and stuff, you have to have that essential body awareness.
Yeah, and I've kind of known that intuitively. That's really interesting how you're connecting. Like, yeah, if they're more present in their sensations and they understand what things feel like, what contraction feels like in their chest, for example, right? Especially women. I was talking to a client this morning of like she was doing work around um, releasing some stuff of when she didn't say no during sex. All the time she never said no when she wanted to, right? And sometimes women don't always know even in that moment what a no is, right? Because they don't know what those sensations feel like in their body. Sometimes it can be very subtle. And then later you're like, oh, that was actually a no. I shouldn't have moved forward with that, right? Um,
Yeah, it's so tough, you know, and that's why I try to encourage people to have conversations before they have encounters. But to be honest, like you can't always plan everything out, and
right.
to do that can kind of take you out of the moment sometimes. So, um, yeah, I think both men and women honestly have a lot of trouble advocating for their desires. I think guys are coming from the perspective of this is somebody I'm interested in with, potentially in love with. I really care about this person, or I really want to get to know them better. And for men, the main tool that they've been taught to use is sex. Is if I'm interested in her, I show her through sex.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily their fault, it's just conditioning, right? And so to then have the women come in and say, oh, that wasn't an enjoyable experience for me, not only feels like a rejection of their sexuality, but of like their manhood. You know, it's like I'm not able to please a woman. And that can be really difficult for both parties and create a sense of disconnection. So I am constantly telling the woman to create boundaries, and your partner should be also creating their own boundaries. So when you know what your needs and desires are and you're able to create boundaries around those boundaries, I feel like people think about like, I'm pushing this person away or I have to drop a huge wall. It's not that at all. This is the container through which I am inviting somebody to meet me. And so within that container, each person can advocate for themselves and say, hey, here's what I desire. Here's what I need from this exchange. What do you desire? What do you need? And that can be a lot more, it can be so much more fulfilling for both parties, honestly. I feel like women don't feel like they can say no. They just kind of have to sit there and take it, and that's like proper submission or service, but it's not. You, by giving a clear request to your partner saying, this is how you may serve me, and that person who is serving you receives pleasure in providing that service. So, I mean, this is not just about male, female, but just like dynamics in general, because some couples don't always fit into the, heteronormative, roles in their sexual relationships. And that's fine. This is not about male versus female. This is just about how can we meet each other in a way that feels safe for our bodies and in a way where we can set ourselves up to have the most positive experience possible. So there's a lot of inner work that has to go into that. But of course, the more that you're aware of your needs and desires, because you've spent some time harvesting a relationship and cultivating that relationship with your inner sensations, then this whole conversation gets so much easier, and you won't even be at that point where it's like, that was kind of a no for me, and I regret having that experience because I should have advocated for myself more. It will probably be more something like, hey, we decided to try something new and explore it, and it just didn't work out for me. But I appreciate, having the openness and the space to do that, and it doesn't have to be like a dirty feeling after. You can always just check in and be like, hey, how was that for you? Don't just like roll over and fall asleep. Check in.
The boundary thing is really, really hard because you're right. Like there's a fragility that we think about with the other person of like, well, if I express my desires or I express like, I actually don't want to go to this place with you. We always think that means it's a complete rejection, and it does take a cultivation of learning how to express your boundaries. What I like to think is though, expressing your boundaries allows that person to express their boundaries better as well, and then you're both like really in your autonomy, right? And really choosing, and that's the best way, right? Because then you can really meet each other in your desires, or
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word compromise either, but it's like both people want each other to be happy,
It's a
right?
negotiation. Yeah. I mean, this sounds transactional, but if we think about this, we are constantly engaged, whether consciously or unconsciously. We're always engaged in these negotiations.
Mhm.
Like the power dynamic is there, whether you consciously address it or not. So you might as well have a conversation about it to clear the air and potentially eliminate any, areas of confusion or disagreement where you guys don't overlap. And, yeah, I think that people are shy to have this conversation because there's this fear of rejection or inadequacy of, okay, I'm really interested in this person, and I'm afraid that if I do truly ask for what I want, or if I set these boundaries in place, then they will say no, and I won't be able to be with the person that I want to be with.
Right.
But really what you're doing is making it easier for them to meet you.
Mhm.
And what you're also doing is helping to keep yourself safe. So you're only offering what feels good to offer, and it's up to that other person to honor those boundaries. And my thing is like, okay, if you can't honor my boundaries, like, do I really want you to be my partner? These are things that you can learn about somebody really quickly, and it takes a lot of the personal attack feeling out of it, because there's nothing personal about it. It's just what you're able to offer somebody else. Be like, all right, I hear you. I totally feel that you want to be received or supported in this kind of way through sexual exchange. I either don't have those skills, or that's not a comfortable situation for me, or um, yes, but later, or yes, but let's focus on these other things first. All of, you give that person so much space to come back at you with a conscious reply versus like, oh, it didn't happen that way that one time we were together, and so this is just how he or she does sex, and so therefore we can't be together. Like, you don't instantly have to go to cutting it off. There's so much space in between to really work on something, but if you don't have that communication, if you don't have that self-awareness, then that is pretty difficult.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you say like yes, but later is also an option too. Like there doesn't,
Yeah.
and it can change. Like your boundaries, like what you might want at one moment might not be the same as what you might want in a couple days. So like, and you have the ability to be fluid just as long as you communicate respectfully, right? And always keep that person, as
Yeah.
you're not rejecting them, you're not pushing them away. You're just taking care
Mhm.
of yourself first. And I really like what you say too, is like a woman thinking like, oh, like in the surrender position, or I'm just like giving, right? And
Mhm.
that's not true, because that's how I developed around I developed a story around sex very early, that I thought men always seemed like they were trying to take from me, and I just had to like I was kind of meant to give, and I was always very resistant. I like pushed men away for a really long time. I'm not giving you anything, right? Like I'm not giving you this. But it was kind of from a toxic headspace, because we were kind of
Mm.
told through culture of like women that this is just the way that it is, or whatnot. Or sex is supposed to hurt, right?
Mm.
Um, and it's so
Yeah.
common. It's so common, and that's not the way that it has to be. You can communicate, and if your partner's not respecting that and respecting your voice and respecting what your body needs, that's a red flag.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Absolutely. And it honestly breaks my heart how many messages I've gotten from girlfriends or students or just people following me on Instagram. I've never had an orgasm in my life. It hurts every time that I have sex. I've never had sex without being drunk because that's the only way I can be in that place of surrender. Like, this isn't, oh, I was just like, oh, I feel for you, because that is just, it doesn't have to be the reality. And it rehashes this trauma cycle of
Yeah.
being disembodied. That's not true freedom. And exploring your sexuality is, I'm only able to have sex because I'm drunk. And
Mm.
I want to say to anybody who's in that place and listening to this and being like, wow, that sounds really great, but it doesn't seem like it's a possibility for me. It really is. And I want to tell you that the way to get there is by relaxing through these layers of stories. There's not more that I feel like in the coaching world, especially, the kind of subtle message that comes through is that you need to do more if you're not experiencing this kind of feeling, because there's something wrong with you, or you're broken, or you need fixing, or anything like that. Um, Most of us have not received the kind of education of how to cultivate a deep energetic connection with our sexual energy. It's a very potent life force. It governs creativity, it governs our desire, it governs so many areas of our life. It's like there's the root chakra and then there's the sacral chakra. So that's step number two after you have, your job and your family, right? It's like, if everything's fine, then of course you're feeling those feelings of loneliness and longing. But where you can reclaim that desire and feel more freedom and spaciousness around it is by taking up space within your own sacred domain. And this goes back to the movement part of it, which is I fully occupy my body and I fully occupy my womb space for women, or my deep root hara space for men. I've worked with the energy in there. I know what it feels like to access that energy. And so I know how it wants to be shared, not because I went through this whole like huge intensive talk therapy procedure or whatever, like this crazy kinky experience. It just wishes to be met in a certain way. And by bringing awareness to that desire and practicing communicating it with others, it can be met in a way that's willingly and easily met. So I feel like a lot of us think our desires or our needs are are constantly like vilified in society or ignored or repressed, or we haven't had our needs or desires met for so long that we just think that's the way it's got to be.
Mhm.
It's not true. You can rewrite that story at any time, and you don't need somebody else to start that process. That process really begins within, and it really begins with you. So by cultivating this belief and this energy of my desires were made to be met willingly and easily in a way that makes me feel safe is such a
Mhm.
paradigm shift. And so
Yeah.
from there, again, if somebody comes into their life and that's not the case for them, if that partner's not being really responsive to those, then it may not be a good match. Now, that's different than being like, okay, I get whatever I want in this relationship and like you're just my servant, right? There's an exchange there. But with the overall arc of the relationship, it should feel like an equal exchange. And that doesn't necessarily mean that both people have the same desires. It could
Mhm.
just be that we're able to meet each other at the same level. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I don't remember exactly how you just placed that statement, but like my desires can be easily met or something like you said one really
Yeah.
powerful statement. I'm like, whoa, like that is a really big paradigm shift because so many people settle in many aspects of their relationship to their body of like in our work, right? They'll settle of like, oh, well, chronic pain has been my story for 10 years. So like that's what it is. And then right when we get them out of chronic pain, they're like, whoa, I didn't know this could be my reality anymore, right? Or
Yeah.
people in their sexuality of like, wow, I didn't know I could actually be with a partner that respects my desires and I'm able to communicate safely with. I didn't know that was possible, right? I had my mind blown several times by entering a relationship with this new partner because of the way that we were able to communicate on so many deep
Mm.
levels. And he was able to respect me, and I was able to be completely authentic. Um, and he was able to meet me and be like, okay, let's continue to meet each other, right? And I was
Yeah.
continually meeting him and being able to express like really uncomfortable stuff about sexuality and relationships and intimacy. It can be like make you want to throw up. Sometimes it's just like, oh my God, I don't want to tell you these things, but these things are really
It's a lot
important
of
because
throat stuff.
yeah, because you don't know
Yeah.
how it's going to be received by that person, but it is what I've noticed is it's the most powerful form of intimacy when you're able to go there with a
Mm.
partner of like really being open and expressive. And then there isn't that feeling of resentment either. I feel like we can get into that place too. We can resent and
Yeah.
project onto that other person. And then it's like, wait, I didn't take responsibility for my desires in stating what I really needed. And I expected them to read my mind or to read my
Hmm.
body. And I think we do
Yeah.
learn to read each other's bodies, right? Of like, it was something we did in Colorado in the dance practices. We spoke a lot in body language, right? So the follow might lean back and the lead has to, notice that, right? And respond
Yeah.
accordingly. Um, but we can't always depend on that. We need to be able to use our voice too.
Yeah, definitely. And congratulations on your relationship. I know you guys just got a new property too, so that's really exciting. I'm so happy for you guys. And that's really amazing how you're able to experience that sense of meeting each other in emotional intimacy. For women, they need that emotional intimacy for the most part to feel safe.
Oh yeah.
Or at least I know that I do. Not, and that's not everybody's story, so I don't want to project that onto anybody, but I know that is really what precipitates me feeling super connected to somebody and really ready to open to them on a more physical level,
Mhm.
beyond just like a primal like attraction to somebody. So I really like some of the points that you spoke to as well, in that some common like insecurities or like mental loops that I see the guys get into is that they make it all about the woman's pleasure, and so much to the extent that they start checking, they get really in their heads about it, and they check out, they're actually not paying attention to what she's doing or to what or how her body is responding because he's so busy pleasing her, which is really funny. But it's like, first of all, pull back, because you also have your own desires. And so sometimes when I ask guys, it's like, well, okay, so what do you want out of a sexual encounter? The first answer I get is, oh, I just want her to be pleased. I just
Which
want her to come. And it's
which
like, well,
is
first of
so
all,
it's so
yeah,
funny because most women are always like they just care about themselves. They just care about themselves. They're just and I'm like, if you've ever really like gotten to a man's desire, like they care so much about making the woman happy. So I just wanted to intercept there because that is true
Yeah.
when you really talk to men. Most good men, like they're
They just want the woman to be happy to the point where they value their self-esteem and their self-worth based upon it. Like if they can't do that, it like destroys them
rise up.
inside. They're like, I cannot fulfill my purpose as a man. So it really is important to them. And so there's obviously a disconnect here where women are not, men are coming from this place of like, all I want to do is be of service. Like truly all I want her to be is happy and in pleasure. And the women are like, I'm not enjoying this at all. Actually. So there's really a disconnect here. And so what I want to say to you, the guys, is like, keep that intention. That's a really sacred intention. But don't feel like you have to have all of the answers. Like each woman is unique. There's no one way to do things right. And so with each new partner that you have, you're going to have to go through the same experience of building up that emotional intimacy, having these conversations about needs and desires, having conversations about birth control and STDs and all of that stuff so that you guys can really enjoy that space of intimacy together. And by simply asking, hey, what do you want? Like that's such a powerful question. And it will really, really help the woman to be like, oh my gosh, he really respects me. I've never been asked what I want from a
Mhm.
sexual exchange
It's
before.
such a
Like,
nice question to receive. What do you want? It's like,
wow, what do
oh,
you want? I'd be like, I get to
thank
say what
you.
I want. And it's just like, well, just whatever you want. No, like, don't throw that away because that's really an opportunity for you to give him guidance in a way that he's willing to accept. He's literally saying, how can I be in service to you? Because you being in pleasure is of service to him, right? That fulfills his sense of being in his masculine, like I've done a good job, like,
Mhm, mhm.
right? And so for the guys, my message would be to just slow down and pay attention to your woman's body. Just from doing body work, like a tickle is a no. A tickle is don't touch me like that, or change the kind of touch, or touch me somewhere, right? So like a light finger tap could be too much, whereas like a flat palm going across the same area could be okay. So again, it
Mhm.
doesn't have to always be like an all or nothing thing. Think small, slow adjustments. Like take your time with it because that way she has or your partner has time to respond and give you feedback, whether it's in like a moan or switching up positions or like you just feel that energy start to rise and you guys are like building that desire. So there's a lot of different ways that you can adjust and give each other that like nonverbal feedback without having to be like, all right, so let's stop this scene. Let's sit down
Let's
and have,
discuss.
yes, let's
Write that on
intensively
my list.
process. We have to talk about that. No, like you can still, again, by being more sensitive to your own sensations in your body, you can start to learn what sensations are working for her. So, and usually people have a range, it's not just one way or one style too. So like, don't be afraid to switch things up, be like, try something new.
Right. I'm gonna also say too, I think I saw a comment come up is like women, who did I talk? I talked to one of my clients about this the other day. She was mentioning about her sex life and saying that she
So let's stop this scene. Sorry.
oh
Sorry, I
um,
was like trying to check the comments.
that she isn't honest in her physical expression during sex to make her man happy, but she's not actually enjoying it and she's not actually giving him true feedback during the encounters, right? And I feel like that's quite common in women. Man, I saw this terrible video. This was like a couple, and she was I hate when they do this, but they were like live, and she was telling him for the first time that she faked a lot, and he's just like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And she was laughing about it. She was
Oh,
like laughing about like, oh, like haha, like it's fine. And he's like, no, like he was really freaking devastated. This was
do you
like,
see my reaction right now? I'm like,
yeah, it was
oh.
terrible. It was so disrespectful to him. I was cringing. I was like, girl, like you guys are missing something really crucial here. And that's really, really important. Again, like women can sometimes have these expectations of, well, this man has to perform this way. He needs to read my body this way. But it's like, are you even in your body enough to know what you're speaking with your body? And are you being truthful in your expressions? That's so, so important. Knowing if you're just playing a scene, playing an act that doesn't feel in integrity and authentic, it can be easy for women who have been in that role
Yeah.
for so long of like performers, right? Like porn, right? There's a lot of porn that you don't see the performer as the woman. Um, it's so important to get back into
Yeah.
the state of what are the sensations in my body, connecting it back to movement, right? Is that's where I start at the level of sensation and body awareness of what am I actually feeling and can I give a voice to these feelings and what do these feelings
Mm.
mean? And then you can translate that into your relationships.
That's such a powerful point, and thanks for bringing up the example of that video. That made me think to offer instead of what I like to do is say, okay, here's a situation that happens commonly, and here's a couple things you can try to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
But I might recommend if like you feel pressure to fake it or something like because I've been in situations, to be honest, where I'm totally into the person. We're having great sex. I'm enjoying it. And then for whatever reason, something goes off in my head and all of a sudden I'm in a really anxious or dark place. I don't
Mm.
know, because stuff comes up during sex, you know? It really, for me, it's a really big emotional release. Some of
Oh,
the
yeah.
time when I first started being sexually active, I would cry almost every single time. So
Yep.
for us, it's like a really common thing to
Mhm.
have like really a wide range of emotions come up during sexual experiences. And so a really great tip that I've learned to implement is, hey, can I just breathe for a second? Or hey, I just need like a glass of water. Or can we try something else? Like I wanna flip over. Or um, this feels a little intense for me right now. Can we go back to this? Or do you mind just holding me for a moment? I just need to catch my breath really quick. Like all of those are very clear requests that your partner is going to be like, oh yeah, of course, you know, like,
Right.
like
Right.
they shouldn't force you into doing anything else. And so within that space, you then again create the container to say, oh, that first part was really great, but then I started feeling a little bit pressured. Can we switch it in this direction, or maybe we can come back to it later? You
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like because you don't have to feel like because both sides didn't come or something like that, that it wasn't your goal wasn't achieved. The goal is not to have both parties come, although that can be a pleasurable part of the experience. It really is about the connection that you're sharing together. And so by faking it, it's a way of being disingenuous, and it's a missed opportunity to advocate for yourself and to cultivate honestly what is really going to be a deeper connection. Because I mean, faking it to me is again the same thing as checking out, is the same thing as
Yeah.
dissociation. It's the same thing as I just want to get this over with. This my sexuality is not about me. This doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel freeing. This isn't my sexuality is for other people, and
Mm-hmm.
they can come into my space and claim it. That's not no. It's really about like here's what I want to give you because it would make me really turned on, and hopefully makes you turned on too.
Yeah. 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 Um, I'm wondering if people watching too feel like they can say like, hey, we're gonna pause here because I know there's again like this at least as women.
Sorry, I'm trying to like pull up this video so I can see some of the comments, and I want to see if there's like any questions.
Can you see it on the thing? Like I can scroll and I can look, except my finger's gonna be on the screen.
Okay.
I don't remember what I was gonna say now. I get distracted when I see like all these people coming on. Maria said, "I never fake an orgasm." Truth, yeah, because you can't have both. You can't have this. I was gonna say you can't have like you faking and being disgenuine, and also want really intimate, connected experiences. Like you cannot have both. You have to make the decision of like, am I gonna stay in this place where I'm being disgenuine just to hopefully appease the other person? Or am I going to really stand for my body and my desires and actually create an even closer connection with the person that I'm with that actually benefits both parties at a much higher dimension than just like faking to make the other person happy and give them an ego stroke, you know? Like there's
Yeah.
totally different experiences from like one to the other. So
Yeah.
I can read some of the comments.
Yeah. Do you want to handle the comments? Because it seems like my technology is having some problems today.
God,
So,
technology. I'm like sweating in here too. It's so hot today in Florida. Okay. Adam said, totally agree that most men really want to be of service and we just don't know how to go about that. We have been taught to do it only one way, and so we have no way of knowing otherwise, so it's being retrained. Yes, absolutely.
You guys are doing the good work, like by even listening to these conversations, by following your curiosity. I just want to encourage y'all, like, any amount of work that you do on yourself in this area is going to profoundly affect all of your relationships, because everybody knows, like, after you've been well fucked, excuse my Sanskrit, like
My dad's
that.
gonna watch this and be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like,
Sorry. After you've had amazing sex with somebody, like, everything is better, right? Once you know you have that person in your life, once you have that kind of exchange,
yeah,
everything is better. You know how to, like, if you know how to ask for what you want in the bedroom, why is it any different going into your boss's office and asking for a raise? Why is it any different, renegotiating the boundaries of the relationships that you have with your colleagues, with your students, with the people in your life, right? This is really not just about sexuality. This is about just healthy relating to other people. So it's like, where else in your life are you not speaking up for for what it is you want? So I apologize for my Sanskrit. I get kind of excited.
no, that's so true. I think there's like a phrase of how you show up in the bedroom is how you show up in other areas of your life, right?
Mhm.
Because it's such an intimate part of us. Like we
Yeah.
cannot separate, well, we can't separate ourselves from it, but it's such like a true core part of us that we want to push it away or ignore it
Yes.
or not really embrace it fully. There's so much baggage around it. Maria said having issues with the video I'll have to watch later. I hope that's not on our end. Too many women suffering through bad sex. If your man isn't trying to please you, find another man. Real men get very excited about pleasing their gal. This is true.
This is true, yeah.
Okay, that was the last comment. Um,
Cool.
yeah, I think, and it's interesting. Some men don't always express that that's really important to them either,
Yeah.
public settings either, and that's
That's a
interesting.
great point. Yeah, because it's almost like being of service has a strong feminine connotation to it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really a neutral concept, but we put a feminine connotation onto it. Same thing with touch. Male
Mhm.
touch is heavily stigmatized. And
Yeah.
so a lot of men never actually receive touch outside of sexual encounters. So, and especially as they age too. So I actually talk about that a lot with my students, is that you need to cultivate relationships where healthy platonic touch is welcomed, and especially within your male to male relationships,
Yeah.
because then you become a beacon for the rest of the community to learn that this is okay. You're not gay if your bro hugs you, you're not gay if you, or like whipped, or like any of these really negative words that we have for men who prioritize being of service to other people. To
Mm.
me, true dominance, true masculinity, being the alpha, is not about um, size, it's not about social status, it's not about money or political power, like any of those like external things. True dominance is about somebody's ability to lead another person through an experience for that person's benefit. And
Oh,
so that is like the ultimate
mm. We need men.
key. We totally need men. And so I think women are asking men to lead them through experiences for their pleasure, but we just, again, we don't, women don't know how to communicate that, and the men don't know how to communicate, this is my intention, because I'm scared of sounding like creepy or
Yeah.
weird, and I'm also really disconnected from what my desires are, and I'm so up in my head about this whole process that I'm just gonna like go to Pound Town and like hope that it works out, you know?
Yeah, there's just so much like that's not being clarified, and it's an uncomfortable place to go. It's an uncomfortable place to go with your partner or have these, or even like you're saying, like listen to these sort of conversations that might like bring up discomforts or might bring up, I'm thinking some people probably be like, well, that's nice they're talking about that, but that's not for me, or I'm not able to do that. But it's true, like you just have to make that choice to be able to like speak your boundaries and get clarification around your desires and all of these things. Like it's available for everybody. It's
It
not just
is.
available for certain people. And it should be available for everybody, and that's really important. And on your point of male touch, is it was really beautiful going into the dance community at that retreat that I did in
Mhm.
Colorado, because the men were embracing touch with one another and they were hugging, and it wasn't like
Yeah.
gay sexual, like it was just connection and just you know, enjoying each other, right? As human beings.
Hmm.
And it was really, really nice to see. And it felt so natural too. Like
Mm.
oh, this
It
is how
is
we're supposed to be as
natural.
humans. Right.
It is natural. It's not natural to do what we're doing now in society, which is to have everybody really isolated, really touch isolated, to really stigmatize male touch, because male touch is not inherently bad. Touch is not inherently bad. It's how that touch is received and or given, and the dynamics of that, and the consent that goes into that, and the trust and the safety that goes into that, which gets misunderstood. So all of this stuff around like consent and Me Too and sexual assault and all of this can be easily prevented. That's the thing. All of this can be prevented with having these kinds of skills and conversations. So I feel like this is kind of like the sex ed that we should have gotten and never got. But like, you know, in communities where touch is less stigmatized and more socially accepted, violence has markedly decreased. And the APA, the American Psychological Association, I think just last year, or even this year, put out like a 30 or 40-page guide on the need to provide mental health services to men. Because if they do not receive this kind of attention in their life, this kind of nurturing, then violence increases.
Mhm.
There's a higher rate of suicide and depression. Other areas of performance decrease. There's higher rates of unemployment. Like it's just, it's
Bad. It's really
crazy.
bad. There's not enough attention to it at all. I've talked to my partner
Mm-mm.
about it frequently, of how the lack of support around men, and that now with like the feminism wave or the feminist wave, it's just like they don't know their role anymore, and they're kind of in this weird
Yeah.
place, right? And it's destructive. Can anybody tell us too what time it is, by the way? I just thought of like
It's 12:19, so maybe we want to wrap up. I think like
it was
50 minutes is good.
we like went all over the world with this conversation, but thank you. Like you really went in depth in a lot of different things. That's really important. So
Thank
guys, if you
you.
want to follow Missy, and it was funny, I had told you when we first got on a call together a couple weeks ago that like I was following both of your accounts and then I linked it together and I was like, it's the same person. Like she's so cool, she's doing all the things. So if you want to link their Instagram pages too, because that's where I see you
Yeah.
pop up the most. More on Facebook is on your Instagram on both your accounts.
I'm so addicted to Instagram, so please do connect with me there. I have two accounts, Boudor Yoga, Boudor Yoga, and also the Body Intuitive. So just to clarify, the Body Intuitive is my main business. That's where I spend most of my time with rehabilitative mobility, chronic pain, very similar to what you do. So I love seeing how, you know, two people have gotten to similar spaces. And then on the Bajor Yoga is where I talk more about like the sovereign sexuality stuff. So feel free to follow me on both or either. And I also like to offer, as I'm sure you do, free consults. So if you guys are interested in going into any of these topics a little bit further, feel free to reach out and message me. Or if you have any questions, I'm at least happy to point you in the right direction. And yeah, I think what's, you know, just a final note, it's really important to build community around these concepts because without learning these things from some of my mentors and practicing these concepts of sovereignty and my sexuality within a community and discussing openly not just my experiences but the
Mm-hmm.
relationship experiences I'm having, I wouldn't have been able to progress as quickly. So we'll take this out of the shadows, we'll take it out of the out of the basement, and we'll bring it into the light of day. And just, you know that if your story and your narrative to date around sexuality has been that of shame or denial or repression or any of that, like, first of all, it's likely that your whatever desires they are not the craziest out there. And then second of all, again, your desires deserve to be met, deserve to be met easily and in a way that's respectful to your boundaries. And then finally, that the path to that sense of freedom is really just through the body. You know, you can't, the body is how we experience our sexuality. It's how we experience orgasm. It's how we experience that feeling of closeness and connection. So let that be an instrument and a tool for you rather than something that you have to fight or control or stigmatize or like manipulate in some kind of way in order to get what you want, because it's just not true.
woo, we are speaking the same language. So it's just like I talk about that too, is like the domination or trying to control our bodies and like trying to put it in little boxes. And it's like, let your body be free. Like give yourself permission to let it express. And you can't always control what those expressions are. Like when you open it, it's just like, whoa, this is part of me. But if you keep locking it down, and of course you need community and safe people around you to allow that to be expressed. You don't just want to just be like, okay, I'm running around naked. Like, being mindful and intentional, right? So that you don't, because
Yeah.
you want to be in a safe environment where you feel like you're not going to want to run and hide again, contract. So
Hmm.
yeah, community and keep having these conversations. Even, I feel like more and more people, at least in our world, probably is like having these conversations. But
Yeah, and yourself included too. So I just want to express my appreciation to you again for first reaching out to me, because that was really cool, just to initiate that connection, and then also to allow that to grow into the space where we can talk about these things and share our experiences with others too. So really, thank you for holding that space today.
thank you for coming. So don't forget to drop your Instagram links in the comments.
For sure.
And I think we're going up to the house now to go paint.
Ooh, sounds amazing. I'm headed off to acro dance practice, so I will be taking my own medicine and getting in some movement here.
That's what I'm going to do in Gainesville. There's like a community. I'm already in the Facebook group and I already
Oh
know
my
where it is every
God.
Sunday. It's for like hours and hours in
Yes.
the afternoon. I'm like, yep, I'm doing that guy when I come up there. So cool.
That's
Enjoy.
so exciting. All right. Well, thank you for this. You guys have a great day. Okay. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.